It all started with a message I never expected to get. I'd been married to Ethan for almost 7 years by then, and things had settled into a comfortable rhythm. I loved him, of course. I'd never doubted that. But the passion we'd had in the beginning, the spark that made everything feel alive, it had slowly faded away. Life became routine, predictable, almost like we were just going through the motions. And somewhere deep inside me, I started to feel invisible. Not to Ethan, exactly, but to myself. I wasn't the girl I used to be, full of energy, curiosity, excitement. I wasn't sure what I was anymore, but I knew it wasn't the person I had once been. I guess I'd been craving something, anything, that could make me feel alive again. I didn't know it at the time, but it had been growing inside me for months. That emptiness, that yearning. Then the message came. Ryan, my ex. It had been years since I'd even thought about him, but there he was, popping up on my phone one afternoon while I was sitting on the couch, scrolling mindlessly through social media.
Hey, Jess!
Long time, huh? I was thinking about you today. How have you been? I stared at the screen for a second, my fingers frozen over my phone. I didn't even know how to feel. Ryan had been a part of my life for a couple of years back in college, but we drifted apart when I got serious with Ethan. We hadn't spoken in forever, and honestly, I hadn't even realized I missed him until that moment. I told myself to ignore it, that I was married, that was a weird thing to reconnect over. But then I found myself typing a response anyway.
Hey! Wow, it's been a while!
I'm good. Just, life. How about you? And just like that, we were talking again. Our conversation was light at first, just catching up on old times. Nothing deep, nothing out of the ordinary. But the more we talked, the more I felt a pull toward him. It was that easy banter we'd always had, the kind that made me feel like I was someone important in his life, even if it was in the past. We exchanged a couple of more messages over the next few days. A few, haha, remember that time and that was crazy, right? It wasn't anything that would have raised red flags if anyone else had seen it. But for me, it was more than just catching up. And then came the invitation. How about we grab a drink sometime soon? Catch up properly. I'll be in town this weekend. I should have said no. I should have known better. But something inside me, maybe it was just the weight of my own dissatisfaction, made me agree. I didn't even think about telling Ethan. I told myself it was harmless, just a drink with an old friend. It wasn't like I was going to fall back into anything, so I said yes. And I told Ryan I'd meet him on Saturday evening at a bar downtown. The days leading up to it were a blur. I tried to keep it out of my mind. I focused on the usual routine, work, cooking dinner, watching TV with Ethan. But every now and then, my thoughts would wander back to Ryan, to the memory of his smile, his laugh, the way he made me feel when we were together. I hadn't realized how much I missed feeling that way. When the day came, I got ready for our meet-up, and I don't know why, but I spent more time picking out my clothes than I had in months. I picked a dress that I hadn't worn in forever, something casual but still cute. When I looked in the mirror, I felt different. Not like the woman I had become in the years of marriage, but like the girl I had been before, the girl who still had dreams and excitement in her life, the girl who felt seen and wanted. I tried to shake the feeling off as I grabbed my keys and headed out the door. But the truth was, I was nervous. I told myself it was just nerves, because it had been a long time since I'd seen Ryan. But honestly, it was more than that. It was the anticipation of something I didn't fully understand. Something that was pulling me in a way I wasn't prepared for. I arrived at the bar early, a little jittery. I stood by the entrance, trying to look casual, but my heart was beating faster than it should have been. And then, I saw him. Ryan. He was standing near the bar, scanning the room. And when our eyes met, I felt this rush of something inside me, something I hadn't felt in a long time. He smiled when he saw me, that same smile that always made me feel like I was the most important person in the room. It felt like no time had passed at all. "Hey, Jess," he said, his voice warm and easy. He pulled me into a hug, and for a second, I forgot everything else. It felt like we were in our 20s again, when life felt like it had infinite possibilities. "You look great," he added, stepping back to look at me. And suddenly, I felt more self-conscious than I had in years. The way he was looking at me made me feel seen, in a way I hadn't been in so long. We sat down and started talking. The conversation was easy, effortless. It felt like we'd never stopped being friends. We caught up on everything: work, old mutual friends, travel. He talked about his job and how he was doing well, how he'd moved across the country and had been settling into a new place. I found myself laughing more than I had in months, my shoulders relaxing. It was like he had a way of making me feel lighter, like I was escaping my own life for a while. But then he said something that made everything shift. "You know, I've been thinking a lot about us lately," he said casually as he stirred his drink. I froze for a second, not knowing what to say. The air between us changed. It wasn't uncomfortable, but it was different, charged. My mind raced as I tried to figure out what he meant. Was he talking about old times, or was it something else? "What do you mean?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Just I don't know," he said with a shrug. "We had something good back then, Jess. It was never unfinished for me, and there it was." I could feel it in my chest, a tightening, a quickening of my pulse. My body was reacting before my mind could catch up. We sat there for a moment in silence, just looking at each other. It wasn't the uncomfortable kind of silence. It was more like the kind of silence where both people know there's more being said than what's coming out of their mouths. I tried to brush it off, but my thoughts were racing. I could feel the tension between us, and I could tell he felt it too. Maybe I didn't want to admit it, but I had missed this. Missed being with someone who made me feel like I mattered, like I was still desirable. After a while, Ryan leaned forward, his eyes darkened, and he said, "You know, it's been so long, Jess. I've always wondered what would have happened if we'd stayed together." And in that moment, something inside me snapped. It wasn't like I wanted to fall back into anything, but the curiosity, the excitement of what could be, was overwhelming. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, and I wasn't sure if I was ready to jump, but I didn't know how to pull back anymore. I didn't pull away when he reached for my hand. It wasn't supposed to happen. I kept telling myself that over and over, like a mantra, as I drove home that night. But deep down, I knew the truth that I couldn't ignore. That moment, when Ryan reached for my hand, it was more than just a casual gesture. It was a signal, a sign that something had shifted, and I was already too far in to turn back. When I got home, Ethan was there, as usual. He was sitting on the couch, watching something on TV. He smiled when he saw me walk in. I smiled back, but it didn't feel right. I didn't feel the same. There was a heaviness in my chest, a guilt that I couldn't shake off. I tried to act normal, to brush it aside. I kissed him on the cheek, like I always did when I got home, and sat down to eat the dinner he had prepared. We talked about nothing important, how my day was, how his day went. But inside, all I could think about was Ryan. I couldn't stop thinking about the way he looked at me, the way his words lingered in the air. I couldn't stop thinking about the touch of his hand, the softness in his voice when he said my name. Ethan was sitting right next to me, laughing at something on the TV, but all I could hear was Ryan's voice echoing in my mind. I didn't want to feel this way. I didn't want to have these thoughts. But they were there, consuming me. The next few days felt like a blur. I went through the motions: work, cooking, cleaning, spending time with Ethan. But it was like I was on autopilot. I was doing everything I was supposed to do. But I wasn't really there. My mind kept drifting back to that night, to Ryan, and that's when I knew something was wrong. When you start thinking about someone else more than your own husband, when the memories of a past relationship start feeling more vivid than your current one, that's when you know you're in deep. And that's when Ryan texted me again. It was just a casual message, asking how I was doing, but I knew what it meant. I knew what I was doing, and yet I couldn't stop. I replied right away. We started talking again. The texts were innocent at first, just small talk about our jobs, our lives. But then, slowly, the tone shifted. The questions became more personal, more flirtatious. And each time I responded, I felt that same pull, that same excitement I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't like I was trying to cheat on Ethan. I wasn't doing it consciously, but I knew deep down that I was crossing a line. One night, after a long conversation with Ryan, he asked if I wanted to meet again. "I know we've been talking a lot lately, but I'd love to see you again, just us. No distractions. Maybe this weekend." I felt the tension build in my chest. I knew I shouldn't go. I knew I was setting myself up for disaster. But there was something in me that couldn't resist. I was craving that feeling again. The feeling of being desired, of being seen as more than just a wife. I'd like that. I typed back before I even had a chance to think about it. And just like that, it was set. We were going to meet again. And I couldn't back out. I told myself I would be fine. That it was just a casual dinner. I could handle it. I loved Ethan, after all. But as the day of the meet-up came closer, my anxiety grew. I tried to convince myself that I wasn't doing anything wrong. I wasn't planning on having an affair. I just wanted to relive something from my past. Something that had always felt good. But I knew deep down that I was already too far gone. That Saturday, I got dressed in a way I hadn't done in a long time. I put on a dress I knew Ryan would appreciate. Nothing too revealing, but just enough to feel like I was stepping into a different version of myself. When I looked in the mirror, I saw someone I didn't recognize. Someone more carefree, more alive. I wasn't sure I liked her. But I didn't know how to stop her, either. When I arrived at the restaurant, Ryan was already waiting for me. He stood up as soon as he saw me, his eyes lighting up. And for the second time in just a few days, I felt like I was the most important person in the room. We sat down and started talking, just like before. But this time, it felt different. There was an energy between us, something that made the conversation feel charged. It wasn't like it had been before, when we were just friends. There was something more now. Something dangerous. We talked about everything. Our lives. What we had been up to in the years since we last saw each other. But it wasn't the content of our conversation that had my heart racing. It was the way he looked at me, the way his gaze lingered on my face, my lips. It was the way I felt myself leaning in, wanting more, craving that attention, that connection. After dinner, we took a walk outside. It was a warm night, and the streets were busy with people enjoying the evening. We talked for a little while, and then, without warning, Ryan stopped walking. He turned to face me, and before I knew it, he kissed me. It wasn't just a peck. It was slow, deliberate, and full of intention. I should have stopped it. I should have pushed him away, told him this wasn't right. But I didn't. I kissed him back. It felt like my body was reacting without my permission, like I was no longer in control of what was happening. And when he pulled away, I felt this rush of regret, but also relief. I didn't know what to do, but I couldn't deny how badly I wanted more. I shouldn't have done that. Ryan whispered, his forehead resting against mine, but I don't regret it. And that was it. That was the moment everything changed. I knew it wasn't right. I knew I was betraying Ethan. But in that moment, with Ryan's lips on mine and my heart racing, I couldn't care. I didn't care. I went home that night, and as soon as I walked through the door, I was hit with the overwhelming feeling that I had done something unforgivable. Ethan was already in bed asleep. I slipped into bed beside him, trying to keep my breathing steady, trying not to let the guilt consume me. But it was there, in the pit of my stomach, gnawing at me. I stayed still, staring at the ceiling, wishing I could go back to the person I was before. The person who didn't need to look outside of her marriage for excitement, for passion. But that person wasn't me anymore, and I didn't know how to get her back. The guilt started to eat at me, but the excitement didn't go away. It was this constant pull, a tug of war between what I knew was right and what I was desperately craving. Every time I saw Ethan, I felt like a fraud. I was wearing this mask, pretending everything was normal, when inside, I was anything but. It wasn't just a physical thing anymore. It was the way I looked at him, the way I didn't feel the same when he kissed me, or when he reached for my hand. And it was like a shadow was cast over everything. That night after dinner with Ryan, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, felt his lips on mine. It was like I was addicted to that feeling, the thrill of being wanted, of being the center of someone's attention. I hadn't realized how much I had missed that feeling until it came back, full force. And I hated myself for it. The next day, I woke up and tried to act like nothing happened. Ethan was already up, making breakfast. He kissed me on the cheek, like he always did in the mornings, and I felt this pang of guilt. I couldn't look at him the same way. It wasn't just about the kiss with Ryan anymore. It was about everything. The way I had been distancing myself, the way my heart wasn't in it anymore. But how could I tell him? How could I explain that I had done something that felt like a betrayal, but I couldn't stop myself? I didn't want to hurt him, but the deeper I went into this lie, the harder it became to get out. And then came the moment I couldn't avoid. Ryan texted me again. "Hey, Jess. I've been thinking about you. How about we meet again soon? I know we can't keep doing this in secret, but maybe we could take this somewhere more." I stared at the message for what felt like forever. Every part of me knew that this was it. This was where it all went downhill. I should have said no. I should have stopped before it got worse. But I didn't. I couldn't. I replied, "Yeah, maybe. Let's talk tomorrow." I didn't even feel guilty at that moment. It wasn't until later, when I was sitting alone in my car, waiting for Ryan to meet me, that it all hit me. I wasn't just meeting him for dinner anymore. This wasn't just some catch-up. This was an affair. And even if I wasn't ready to admit it yet, I was already in too deep. The night we met again, it was like all the walls I had put up came crashing down. I was scared, yes, but I was also excited. We met at a different place this time, a quieter, more intimate spot. When I walked in, I saw Ryan sitting at the bar, waiting for me. He smiled when he saw me, and that familiar feeling of being desired, of being noticed, rushed back. We talked, but we didn't talk much about anything serious. There was too much tension, too much unspoken energy between us. And I knew it, and so did he. Every word we said was just a prelude to something else. I could feel it in the air, in the way he was looking at me. He leaned closer, brushing his fingers against mine on the bar, and I couldn't pull away. I didn't want to. Before I even knew what was happening, we were walking out of the restaurant and heading towards his car. It felt like I was in a daze, like I wasn't really in control of my body. I wanted to stop. I wanted to go back home to Ethan, but the pull to be with Ryan was so strong, I couldn't stop it. He kissed me again, this time harder, more desperate. I kissed him back, and for a moment, I forgot who I was supposed to be. But then, in the middle of it, reality hit me. I pulled away from him, my breath shaky, and looked at him, feeling this wave of panic wash over me. What was I doing? Ryan, I started, but I didn't even know how to finish the sentence. "Jess," he said softly, cupping my face in his hands. "I want you. I've always wanted you." And then, for the first time, I heard the words I had been afraid of, the words that made me question everything. "I want this," he said. "I want you with me. Let's stop pretending, Jess. I can give you everything you need. More than what you're getting now. We both know it." I didn't answer him right away. I couldn't. My heart was pounding, and my mind was racing. I knew what this meant. If I let myself go any further, I would be crossing a line I couldn't uncross. But I was already standing on the edge, and I wasn't sure I could turn back. Before I could even gather my thoughts, he kissed me again, more intensely this time. And I didn't stop him. I let myself get lost in it, in the feeling of being wanted, of being desired. And it was like the whole world disappeared. It was just me and him, and I didn't care about anything else. The next morning, I woke up in a hotel room, my head pounding from the alcohol and the lack of sleep. I felt the cold, hard reality settle in as I sat up in bed. I was still wearing the same dress from the night before, my makeup smeared, my hair a mess. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt like I had just made the worst mistake of my life. But even as I tried to process the regret, there was a part of me that didn't want to regret it. A part of me that felt alive in a way I hadn't in years. I didn't want to be this person, but I couldn't ignore what I had done. I had betrayed Ethan, and I couldn't take it back. When I finally returned home, I was quiet. Ethan was sitting on the couch reading. He looked up when I walked in, his face lighting up with that familiar smile. But when he saw my expression, the smile faltered. "Hey, Jess," he said, his voice softer than usual. "How was your night?" And there it was. The question that I couldn't answer. The question that would unravel everything. The question that I wasn't ready to face. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to tell him the truth, and I wasn't sure I ever would. But I knew I had to. I couldn't keep living this lie. But for now, I just nodded, forcing a smile. "It was fine," I said. "Just a long night." But even as I said it, I felt like the walls around me were closing in. I wish I could say that I woke up the next morning with clarity, but I didn't. The guilt was there, sure, but so was the emptiness, the feeling of being trapped. The worst part was that I was lying to myself as much as I was lying to Ethan. I kept telling myself that I could stop, that I could keep pretending everything was okay, that I could somehow reconcile these two sides of me, the wife and the woman I'd been before. But the truth was, they couldn't exist in the same space anymore. Something had to give. The morning after the hotel room felt like the start of a new chapter, but it wasn't a good one. I couldn't face Ethan. I couldn't look him in the eye without feeling like I was suffocating. It wasn't just the physical act of betrayal that weighed on me. It was the emotional disconnect I had started to feel. And that scared me. It scared me because I knew if I let myself go any further down this path, I might not be able to turn back. That morning, I forced myself to go through the motions. Ethan had made coffee, like he always did. He was sitting at the kitchen table, reading the paper, looking like nothing had changed. He smiled when he saw me walk in, and I smiled back, although it felt more like a mask than anything genuine. "Good morning, babe," he said, pushing a mug toward me. "How'd you sleep?" I couldn't lie. I couldn't tell him I slept perfectly fine, that I hadn't been awake for hours, wrestling with my own thoughts. I couldn't tell him I was struggling to hold everything together, to ignore the fact that I had crossed a line I didn't even know existed. "Fine," I said, my voice flat. I took the mug from him and sat down, trying to focus on anything but the overwhelming sense of dread in my chest. "Are you okay? You seem a little off," Ethan asked, his voice soft, a tinge of concern in it, and that's when it hit me. He knew. He didn't know what he knew, but he knew something was wrong. He could feel it. There was no way to hide it from him. My distance, my disconnection. It wasn't something that could be swept under the rug. "I'm just tired," I said, offering the weakest excuse I could come up with. "Long week." I tried to make it sound normal, but it didn't feel normal. And deep down, I knew that Ethan wasn't buying it. But he didn't push it. He just nodded and went back to his paper, as if he was willing to give me space to sort it out. The rest of the day was a blur of mundane activities. Errands, picking up groceries, small talk. But every moment felt like I was living in someone else's life. I was going through the motions, yes, but nothing felt real anymore. My heart wasn't in anything. The woman I used to be, the one who was so sure of what she wanted, of who she was, felt so far away. The girl who had walked down the aisle with Ethan, who had promised to love him through everything, didn't exist anymore. She was gone, replaced by someone I didn't even recognize. And then Ryan texted me again. I saw his name flash across my screen, and for a moment I just stared at it. I knew what it meant. I knew what he wanted. But I didn't know if I could go through with it again. I didn't know if I could betray Ethan any further. But I had already betrayed him, hadn't I? I clicked on the message. "Hey, Jess. I've been thinking about you. We should talk. I need to see you again. We need to figure this out." I read the words over and over again. And before I even had a chance to stop myself, I was typing back, "Okay, let's talk." I hit send before I could change my mind. I didn't know why I was doing it. Was it because I still felt this pull towards Ryan? Was it because I was scared of facing the mess I had created? Or was it just because I didn't know how to stop? But deep down, I knew this was it. This was the moment I couldn't undo. I was about to cross a line that, once I crossed it, there would be no going back. Later that night, when Ethan was out with his friends, I met Ryan again. This time, I didn't feel that initial excitement, the rush of rebellion, of sneaking around. No, this time it was different. It felt heavier, more like a choice than a mistake. Ryan was waiting for me at the same place we'd met before. That same quiet bar, but everything felt different. I didn't feel like I was escaping from anything anymore. I was fully aware of what I was doing, fully aware of the consequences. But I was still going through with it. Ryan greeted me with a smile, but it didn't feel like the carefree, fun connection we had the first time. There was tension in the air. I could feel it, like a storm building just above the horizon. We sat down, and for the first time since we'd started meeting again, I didn't know what to say. The silence between us was heavy, but neither of us wanted to break it. Finally, Ryan spoke. "I know this isn't easy, Jess." I know you're torn, but I want to be with you. I want you to be with me. I think we can make this work, if you're willing to try." His words hit me like a ton of bricks. I had been playing this game of pretending for so long, but now, it wasn't just about the thrill or the excitement. It was about making a choice. And the reality of what I was doing, what I was about to throw away, became crystal clear in that moment. "I don't know if I can do this," I said, my voice shaking. "I don't know if I can leave him. I don't even know if I want to." Ryan reached for my hand, his touch soft but firm. "You don't have to make a decision right now. But you need to be honest with yourself, Jess. About what you want. About what we want." And there it was. The truth I had been avoiding. The question I had been too scared to ask myself. What did I want? Did I want to keep living this lie with Ethan? Pretending everything was fine. Pretending that nothing had changed. Or did I want to take a chance on something new? On someone who made me feel alive in a way I hadn't felt in years? I didn't have the answer right then. I didn't know what to do, but I knew I couldn't keep living this way. The weight of my choices, the weight of everything I had done, was too much to bear. When I got home that night, I was still torn. Ethan was in bed when I walked in, and for a moment, I just stood there in the doorway, watching him sleep. He looked so peaceful, so unaware of everything that was happening. And in that moment, I realized something that broke me all over again. He deserved better than this. He deserved someone who could give him all of me, someone who wasn't holding parts of herself back. I climbed into bed beside him, my heart heavy with the realization that I had already destroyed the trust between us. I didn't know how to fix it, how to undo the damage I had done. But I knew one thing for sure: I couldn't keep lying to him. I couldn't keep living in this dual reality. And I knew I had to tell him the truth.